News report. The storm Miggy death toll rises as hundreds of thousands displaced in Philippines. The scenes of a landslide caused by tropical storm Miggy, which hit the village of Cantagonas by Baybay Town, Leyte Province, Philippines on April 13. CNN, the death toll in the Philippines from tropical storm Miggy has risen to 76 while hundreds of thousands of others remain displaced, authorities in the country said Wednesday. Many of the deaths came in landslide and faults caused when the storm made landfall on Sunday, buffering the CNN News. Storm Miggy death toll rises hundreds of thousands displaced in Philippines. The scenes of a landslide caused by tropical storm Miggy, which hit the village of Cantagonas and Baybay Town, Leyte Province, Philippines on April 13. CNN, the death toll in the Philippines from tropical storm Miggy has risen to 70, while hundreds of thousands of others remain displaced, authorities in the country said Wednesday. Many of the deaths came in landslide and floods caused when the storm made landfall on Sunday, bothering the eastern and southern coast of the Philippines with sustained winds of up to 65 km 40 miles per hour and gusts of up to 80 kph and 49 mph. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council said at least 29 people remain missing and 8 others are injured. More than 920,000 people have been affected by the storm, over 200,000 people displaced, while more than 38,000 were preemptively evacuated. The council said some 660 evacuation centers are in operation, it added. The agricultural damage caused by Miggy, known as agaton in the Philippines, is estimated at more than 8 million or 423.8 million Philippine pesos. As of Wednesday, twice the amount reported a day earlier, the Department of Agriculture said. At least 6,500 Palestinian farmers and 10,920 hectares of farmland have been affected with commodities including rice, corn, and livestock hit by the tropical storm, the department added. Among the worst affected regions are Western Visayas, Eastern Visayas, and Caragas. Damage caused by tropical storm Miggy in Mindanao, Philippines, in the eastern province of Leyte. The bodies of 22 people were recovered after being buried under the landslide, Chomen Kaldu Police Chief of Baybay City told reporters earlier this week. There were landslides in communities and then some of the victims were swept by floods, Kaldu said. The mayor of Boyog in Leyte Province said on Facebook that the landslide had wiped out Pillar, a local barangay and neighborhood in a catastrophe. This broke my heart. The landslide had taken place even as preemptive evacuation efforts took place, Level Jean K. Chea said in his post. We had exerted all means possible to save the people of Barangay Pilar. We were able to rescue and save some wounded children, senior citizens injured, and deceased individuals. As of today, the survivors are under medication and are well taken care of. All evacuees, on the other hand, are safe and under our care. Images shared by the local fire bureau on Monday showed rescuers wading through water near partially submerged homes and digging for a survivor in the landslide hit area. Miggy, which was downgraded to tropical depression on Monday, was the first storm to hit the archipelago this year. The country experiences around 20 such storms annually. The Philippines still reeling from the effects of Super Typhoon Ray, strongest typhoon to have hit the country in 2021. Ray, known locally as a death, claimed more than 300 lives and injured more than 500 people, said in a Philippine reported citing the Philippine National Police. News report on Friday, April 1, 2022. Obiana still out of Atafa. The conflict between AG Obiana and the Philippine Athletic Track and Field Association Patafa is finally overflowing. A successful mediation single-handedly brokered by Philippine Sport Commission PSC Chairperson William Botch Ramirez. But it doesn't mean that Obiana had already regained his membership in the federation. A reliable source user told Daily Tribune that this reinstatement wasn't part of the agreement between Patafa and Obiana, who allegedly mismanaged the public funds meant for the salary of his Ukrainian coach Vitaly Petrov from 2018 to 2021. The source said the only part of the agreement was for the federation to endorse him into crucial tournament ahead the 31st Southeast Asian SEA Games in May, the World Athletics Championship in July, in exchange for his apology to the Patapa Board of Trustees, athletes, and coaches who were deeply hurt by his previous action and statements. Among the pronouncements that said to have driven a wedge between him and the federation was posted on his Facebook account on 24 January saying that I do not jump for Patapa President Mr. Philip Ella Trico or the Patapa. I jump for my beloved country, Philippines. Viana is said to face Trico Patapa chairperson Rufus Rodriguez, Patapa Secretary General Romel Seden, and other members of the board, as well as the national athletes and coaches and conference call tentatively set on Monday. The source, however, said Obiano remains outside of the national team. No, not yet. Getting reinstated as a member of the national team wasn't part of their agreement during the fifth round of the mediation last Wednesday, said the source, speaking on the condition of anonymity due to the sensitive and confidential nature of the mediation process. What they have agreed on was for Patafa to endorse Obiana in the SEA Games and World Championship in exchange for his apology to the board, athletes, and coaches. That's all. The source added the federation remains open to welcome Obiana back, but he has fulfilled some criteria and abide by its rules and regulations while respecting its status as the sole governing body of athletics in the country under the World Athletics. Fatapa is very much open to having him back. However, he has to fulfill some criteria that will make him worthy of a spot in the federations. Fatapa also has to be fair to other athletes who are abiding by its rules and regulations, the source said. Daily Tribune tried, but Trico couldn't be reached for comment. In a press statement released late Wednesday, the PSC announced that Obiana and Patafa had settled amicably after more than 4 months of bickering and mass slinging. Actually, it could have ended as early as December, but Obiana declined the decision over twice, saying that the federation using the peace talks to keep my silence and the truths hidden. The government sports agency said the federation agreed to endorse Obiana's participation in the SEA Games and World Championships, but not in other events pending his reinstatement to the National Athletics Squad. News report Friday, April 22, 2022 at 7:56 p.m. U.S. braces for potential French election shockwave. Washington, U.S. officials are anxiously watching the French presidential election, aware that the outcome of the vote on Sunday could scramble President Joe Biden's relations with Europe and reveal dangerous fissures in Western democracy. President Emmanuel Macron of France has been a crucial partner as Biden has rebuilt relations with Europe, promoted democracy, and forged a coalition in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But Macron is in a tight contest with Marine Le Pen, a far-right challenger. Le Pen is a populist agitator who, in the style of former President Donald Trump, scorns European Union globalists, criticizes NATO, and views President Vladimir Putin of Russia as an ally. Her victory couldn't complicate Biden's efforts to isolate Russia and aid Ukraine. But the very real prospect of a nationalist leading France is also a reminder that the recent period of U.S.-European solidarity on political and security issues like Russia and democracy may be deceptively fragile. Poland and Hungary, both NATO members, have taken authoritarian turns, and Germany's surprisingly strong response of Russia's invasion of Ukraine is already drawing domestic criticism. To have a right-wing government come to power in France would be a political earthquake, said Charles A. Copchan, a professor at Georgetown who was the Europe director of the National Security Council during the Obama administration. It would send a troubling signal about the overall political health of the Western world. He added, this is a moment of quite remarkable European unity and resolve, but Le Pen's election would certainly raise profound questions about the European project. Macron was unable to command more than a small plurality of support against several opponents in the first round of voting on April 10. Le Pen, who finished second, and his opponent in the runoff election Sunday. Polls show Macron with a clear lead, but analysts say a Le Pen victory is completely plausible. An immigration hardliner and long-term leader of France's populist right, Le Pen has campaigned mainly on domestic issues, including the rising cost of living, but the foreign policy views of unsettled U.S. officials. Last week, she renewed vows to scale back France's leadership role in NATO and to pursue a strategic rapprochement with Russia after the war with Ukraine has concluded. Le Pen also expressed concern that sending arms to Ukraine risks drawing other nations into the war. In the debate Wednesday, Macron reminded voters that Le Pen's party had taken a loan from a Russian bank. You depend on Mr. Putin. He told her Le Pen insisted she was an absolutely the totally free woman and said stole foreign cash after French banks refused to lend to her. She also sought to deflect charges that she was sympathetic to Russia's war aims, declaring her absolute solidarity with the Ukrainian people. Le Pen has also pledged to curtail the influence of the European Union, which the Biden administration sees as a vital counterweight to Russia and China. One senior U.S. official noted that France has a recent history of right-wing candidates striking fear into a political establishment before falling short. That was the case 5 years ago when Macron defeated Le Pen in a runoff, but recent elections in the West have been prone to upset, and analysts warn against complacency in Washington, especially given the stakes for the United States. One sign of how much the Biden administration values its partnership with Macron was the minor sense of crisis after France withdrew its ambassador to Washington in September after this disclosure of a new initiative between the United States and Britain to supply Austria with nuclear submarines. Macron's government blamed the Biden administration for the loss of the lucrative submarine contract it had with Austria and was especially angry to learn about arrangements through a leak to the news media. Biden officials expressed remote support for France in a flurry of meetings and phone calls, and Biden called the episode clumsy. France was extremely fluid, valued US partner said. If Le Pen were to win, Biden's national security team would be forced to resist that relationship. The most pressing question would be the status of economic sanctions against Russia, in which the European Union plays a crucial role. During the debate Wednesday, Le Pen said the supported sanctions against Russia's financial system and oligarchs, but opposed banning import of Russian oil and gas, saying that the French people should not have to suffer. I don't imagine Marine Le Pen going to see Vladimir Putin 2 weeks after getting elected and talking about a great seat and relation, said Martin Kunzes, the deputy director of the Paris office, the German Marshall Fund. Rather, it would be more like Pen as a president making more difficult for the EU and the US to agree on a new posture, a new package of sanctions, and to agree within NATO on what we need to do on the eastern flank added. For the Biden team, The fallout from a Libyan victory would stand with beyond policy toward Russia and deal a blow to his project of bolstering democracy against authoritarianism worldwide, said Daniel Pear, the acting director of the Europe program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Biden sees this moment as a contest between democracy and autocracy, he said. Over the longer term, certainly having one of the world's most revered advanced democracies elect a liberal person would be a setback for the cause of democracy writ large. Kochan noted that the vigorous European response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine had pepper over simmering concern in Washington about autocracy in countries like Poland and Hungary, whose right-wing Prime Minister Viktor Orban was comfortably re-elected last month. Everything the, the world worried what before February 24, the date of the Russian invasion is still lurking beneath the surface, Kopchan said. And if Levin did win, it would mean that liberalism, the politics of racism, of protectionism would be on the surface. He added, in some ways, all the domestic trials and tribulations are in suspended animation, but they still with us. And the French election shines a bright light on that.